Okay, welcome back, Britt, to the Dental Hygiene Basics podcast. So excited to have you on again. For all of our listeners, we've had Britt from Brush with Britt on previously. We went all through your dental hygiene origin story. We talked about so many amazing things in that episode. So definitely make sure you listen to that. I would say as an intro to this one. And today we're talking about all things finances, which I'm very excited about because it's one of my favorite topics. And we touched on it quite a bit in our original episode together. We talked about, you going through school and debt free, all of the amazing things you did to get through that point. So I'm excited to kind of extend that conversation beyond school and into that next phase of life, into the career for these new graduates and talking about finances. So I want to know what kind of inspired you to discuss this topic today.
Well, thank you for having me on again. And, with this topic, I feel like I see so many people talk about hourly rate. And as a new grad, it was something I was really, really hyper focused on. And I just know now, being almost 5 years in, that there is so much more that goes into a job position other than just hourly rate. And so I just really wanted to talk about it because of that alone. I know there's so many new grads out there that are wondering how much should they ask for when they are looking for a new job and things like that. So that's really where the inspo came from.
Yeah, I love it. I think it's a great conversation to have because really the only people I talked about that with when I was graduating were the people in my class. Yeah, it was kind of hard to find salary information and how much should I get paid? Oh, how much are you getting paid? And we see a lot of conversations about wages now out on TikTok, on social media, all of those things. And so I think it's good to talk about what goes into that compensation because sometimes it's not just how much you're getting paid per hour. There are some other factors we should consider as well. So, why do you think it's important for hygienists to start thinking about finances early, maybe even before they graduate school?
Well, most positions, you only have your hourly rate. You may not have like your 401k and things like that. And so that really, to me, is a con of being a dental hygienist. There are some offices that offer those other things, but I think for those offices that don't offer it, that's when you really have to start thinking about your future as a hygienist and your longevity, especially because we are so prone to musculoskeletal disorders.
Yeah, absolutely. That's what I think about all the time. Like, okay, how do I set myself up for success now so that if I want to take an extended vacation or if I want to take a mini retirement or if I just want to retire early, and like my goal, I'm always like, I just want to be work optional by 45. That would be my goal. It's hard, but it's possible. And I've done that without really any retirement packages, working clinically throughout the years. So I want to kind of dive in first to that hourly rate. What do you think goes into that? What are your thoughts on the hourly rate? Just kind of give us anything you think you want to talk about regarding that.
So, of course, it matters, but I think that there are so many other things that you want to take into consideration when you're looking at a position. And when we start to compare ourselves to others, I think that that can really close off your mind to all of the other things that you want to make sure you are considering. And when it comes between like $1 or $2 difference, you have to weigh your pros and cons and see if it's really worth the amount of stress that you might put yourself through thinking about if somebody else is making $1 more than you or $2 more than you, or you can even be creative with it and think of different things to ask for that might be more than just that extra dollar. So
Yeah, so true. I had a student reach out to me and they were saying, I'm thinking about asking for a raise, and they had only been graduated for a year and they're talking to their colleagues who had also been graduated for a year. And some of the discussions made this person think I should be asking for way more. I'm getting significantly underpaid. And I said, well, you have to think about the conversation you're going to have going in there, right? Because you accepted one pay and you have to think about, well, what are you bringing to the table, And also, are there those creative ways? I always say ask for different bonuses, production based bonuses. There's a lot that you can do to raise your pay by $1 or 2 an hour that doesn't necessarily have to be just tied to that hourly rate, which I think is really good. So, what are some like hidden benefits or perks that maybe an office might offer that's outside of that hourly wage?
equipment, instruments that are good, up to date, work sharp. Those are things that are not only better for patient care, but they are better for you physically. A dull instrument is going to make your hand work harder, which could lead to injury. So, just being able to get new instruments on like a regular basis is something that I think that we should really value because it will also increase the longevity of your career, which means you'll be able to work longer, which ultimately means more money, right? So
Yes.
I think that that's definitely a hidden benefit or just something that, I mean, ideally, we would have an office that gives us those things, but that's just not the case for all practices. And we want to think about those things. Like if you have somebody that's making more than you, but they have equipment that doesn't work or they have really old instruments and the doctor doesn't update those things, like that matters. So it's definitely something to think about.
Yeah, I think a lot of discussions I see online, it's kind of this hygienists don't want to bend or break on anything. We want the high paying job, we want brand new instruments, we want the air powder polisher and all everything to be high tech, but then we also want to be treated well and compensated well. There's so many factors that go into it. And I think this is a good point to talk about because I know for me, I've taken jobs that paid less because I knew they would make me happier. I talk about this sometimes, but like my public health job, my education jobs, I could have been making 10 or $15 more, maybe even $20 more an hour. But I wanted to find some place that I felt valued and that I also valued what I was doing as well. But sometimes that means you don't always get the equipment that you want or, all of the
Hmm.
bells and whistles that you're hoping for. Besides instruments, can you think of any other things that would say a job is worth more than just the paycheck?
Oh, yeah. So many things, and I think you kind of hinted at it, is a positive work environment. A positive work environment, a healthy work environment, a place where you don't feel anxiety when you go in, where you're treated properly. You can't put a value on that. I would much rather take a lower hourly rate to be in a happy, healthy work environment where I will thrive in. I've been in those negative, toxic places where, I've been so stressed that like I'm like losing hair. Oh, you can't pay me enough to lose my hair anymore. Like, that's not going to happen. So that's something to definitely consider because we struggle finding those practices. And so I think that when you find one and maybe you're getting paid a little bit less, it still might be worth it for you to stay.
Yeah, and there's a lot to consider when we think about the hourly wage because I know when I went from my first job out of hygiene school, I was kind of paid on the lower end, but in San Antonio, it's a lower wage than in like Austin or Dallas or something like that. But then when I went to the next job, they asked, how much is your salary or how much, do you want hourly? And I was like, well, I'm getting paid 36 right now. And I told them how much I was getting paid. And I did not ask for anything more, but one, because I was desperate to move to this new environment, hoping for something that would make me happier and, find all of those wonderful perks outside of just salary. But, you also have to have those tough conversations sometimes. And you don't want to undersell yourself. How would you kind of have a conversation like that, I guess, if you were transitioning to a new office?
I learned pretty early on because I did the same exact thing. So when I was a dental assistant, I was getting paid, let's just say like $15. And then I moved to a new city that was like 3 hours away and I had no clue what to ask for. This was before Instagram and all of that was around to find information. We didn't have chat yet. And so I just went to this next practice at a different place and I was like, oh, I'm going to ask for $2 more, thinking I'm asking big bucks, right? I'm like, I'm going to ask for 17. And when I said 17, to me, like it felt like I was asking like this huge thing, but I had already had experience as an assistant. And I just remember they instantly said yes. And that was when I knew, like, oh, dang, I probably could have asked for more. And so this is when I learned kind of like a negotiation tactic is to give them a range of what you're looking for. If I was going to be happy at like $18 an hour, then I should have said, I'm looking for anywhere between $17 and $19 an hour. Give them a range so that they are kind of forced to then say, okay, well, we were thinking $18 an hour. And then in my head, I'm like, perfect. Like that's where I was going to be happy. Or you might be surprised and they say 19. So that's kind of just a negotiation thing that I've learned over time. And that way you don't end up like lowballing yourself too much and then later on end up feeling like, oh dang, I'm being underpaid and now I have to like ask for a raise, which is nerve-wracking.
Yeah, the other thing too that you could ask, because I've started doing that too, the range. And once you put the range out there, I'm always pleasantly surprised to see what they come up with usually. And if they don't, then you're like, well, maybe this doesn't fit what I need, especially if I have a longer commute or, maybe the instruments aren't as great or I was kind of so so. The other thing that I like to do too is let's say that they give you slightly lower and you're like, well, it's a little bit lower than I was thinking, but maybe could we do a 3 months and then increase the pay at 3 months? Or maybe could we implement a sealant bonus? Every sealant I do, I get $5, $10 or something like that, or fluoride. And bringing it to the table, I think it makes it harder for someone to say no, but it also clues them in that you're interested in building money for the practice as well and kind of growing and building. But where did I hear it said something like, it's always no if you don't ask, right? The answer is
Mhm.
always no if you don't ask. And women routinely don't tend to ask, right, for a higher salary, negotiating, things like that. And it just takes one little quick second to give a range or make a little change like that to build on your hourly wage. Great conversation. Very excited about that. So, anything else you want to talk about regarding hourly paycheck, or would you like to move more into retirement now?
I think you mentioned it too as far as commute and maybe even like the amount of days that you're working. I feel like as a new grad, I did it myself where I took on 5 days because I thought, I'm excited. I'm this broke dental hygiene student. I'm excited to go out there and make money. So I take on 5 days a week. And it does, in my opinion, lead to burnout very quickly because it's a lot. Clinical hygiene is a lot. And so if you are fortunate enough to not have to take on those 5 days, I think if you can find a position that is a little bit more flexible and maybe can give you like 3 or 4 days a week, start with that, and that's a bonus. Some offices are gonna tell you, "No, we're only looking for 5 days a week." So that might cut off that as an option, and you might look elsewhere. Kind of starting with that 3 to 4 day range will give you an idea of how much you can handle. And it's much easier to add on a fifth day if you want it rather than take away. I see a lot of new grads take on 5 days and then they try to cut back. And then the office is like, no, you can't cut back on days. So I think it's much easier to do it the other way around if you can. And as far as commute, I've commuted to a lot of my different practices, and my current practice is so close to home. And I think that that's a huge benefit to have because you get so much time back of your day. So that's just another thing to take into consideration.
Yeah, absolutely. You don't realize how much time you give up when you're commuting, and you have to factor that into the hourly wage as well. I know for me, I would drive further, even if it was a lower wage, if I knew I was going to be happy getting there. But you do lose a lot of time in your day. I mean, there was a time where I was commuting 2.5 hours, full like round trip. And I didn't realize until I started working more from home. It's like, I have all this time. Like, what do I
Mhm.
do now? Like, I have so much time to do all the things, and it really does make a difference kind of bringing back some of that time into your life, especially when we're tired. We may not have the energy to work out or cook dinner or all the things, but if you're not driving that long, it really can make a big difference. Okay, so moving into kind of retirement and long term planning, like you mentioned, in a lot of clinical jobs, there's really may not be retirement options. I was lucky in one office, I had some retirement options, and the next, I did not. When I worked in education, I did. But what do you think is the best way for people, maybe new grads who don't have any retirement options, to kind of get their foot in their door and get started there?
So obviously I'm not a financial advisor.
We'll
It's
give the disclaimer
I
now.
would
Yeah.
yeah, give the disclaimer, but I do think that a Roth IRA is a great thing to look into, and starting it early can really set you up well, and just getting into the habit of contributing to it. So I honestly think that that's probably the number one thing that I would recommend starting with.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I'm like team Roth all the way. You just have to make sure based on the income, and if you have a spouse, their income as well, you may not be able to contribute. And then there's limits as well to how much you can contribute in a year. So doing a little bit of research, but it's pretty easy once you get the hang of it, and it's all tax free, right? Or you pay taxes on it, but then you put it in the Roth, and then the Roth grows tax free. So when you take that money out later, once you're at retirement age, you don't have to pay taxes on it again, which is really nice. So it just grows, grows, and grows for you, assuming you invest it wisely. But, there are plenty of amazing certified financial planners who can help you do that for sure. So, thinking through, a person who's new and they're wanting to contribute maybe to a Roth or some type of IRA retirement plan, what do you think is a good amount to set aside for retirement each month?
Each month, I mean, I would say if you're looking to like maximize the Roth, if you do have that opportunity, then kind of just splitting it up month by month. And of course, I mean, I feel like it depends so much on how much each person has going on in their life and what kind of bills that they have to pay. But If you're able to, I think like it's currently at like 7,000 or something that you can max out every year. So if you can just divide that into 12 months and just save that every month, I think that's a good place to start.
Absolutely. And, a lot of hygienists, when you're graduating, you may be younger, and there really is power in compound interest and starting sooner, right? I don't know. I feel like I'm finally at an age where I'm finally seeing my investments work for me. Before it was like, it was just felt tough.
Like nothing's happening.
I'd put that money in there every month, and you're like, I would really like to have that money in my pocket right now, but it takes some patience and diligence. And now when I get on there and I see like it's growing each month, you're like,
You're like,
what?
okay, cool.
Yeah, yeah, and you have to have that thought process of this is gonna take time before I really see results, but either way, it's still growing because it's, money that you're putting in there. But with the fact, we mentioned we have musculoskeletal disorders, we have high risk of these things, and clinical life is hard for a hygienist, but you have to think about your retirement sooner rather than later.
I think as I see my parents get to that age, that's what's really like clicked to me to make me start thinking about that and invest in that. And I think when we're new grads and we're in those like maybe our 20s and stuff, we're not so much thinking of those things. At least I wasn't when I was that age. So now it's starting to hit me like, okay, you got to make sure you're contributing the full amount to that and make sure you set yourself up with something.
Yeah. Like you mentioned, if you go from 5 days a week and you try and go down to four, you get used to 5 days a week income, and now you're trying to live on four. It's always easier to kind of start with something and get used to it when you first graduate. And I think the same with a retirement plan or just any type of savings. If you're like, I know I'm going to take $500 every month and put it into savings. Maybe I don't fully understand retirement yet, but that eventually is going to go into a retirement plan. Anything's better than nothing, right? Yeah, yeah, I love it. So, thinking through expenses, saving money, do you have any budgeting recommendations, or do you use a special budget?
So I don't have a special budget, but there are things that I feel like I just tend to do over time that just help me save money. So one of them being the car that I drive. And, if your thing is buying a new car and that's your gift to yourself, like, do you more power to you, like, get that. But for me personally, I feel like I have saved so much money because of the fact that I drive an older car. I don't have a car payment. And that's how it was like throughout dental hygiene school. Like I'm literally driving the same car that I drove in dental hygiene school. So I think that if you are okay with that, I think that saves a ton of money. I mean, I think about how much a car payment would be and I'm like, okay, that would be a lot and that would take away a lot from what I've been able to like contribute to my Roth IRA.
Yeah, because it's not just the car payment, it's also the insurance, registration, whatever other fees, and then oil changes, new tire, right?
It's a
And
lot.
yeah, and cars are depreciating assets. They go down in value the longer that you drive them. So it's actually better to drive them, like you said, as long as you can. I'm like, until the wheels fall off, right?
Yeah, I'm like, just give me a car that can take me from A to B, make sure it's clean, I'm good.
Yes, exactly. I know, and I see a lot of things that new grads get out there and buy. I remember in class it was like, "What are you going to buy with your first paycheck?" Everyone was like, "A car." I think I put a bed. I was like, I'm in there 8 hours a day. Like, I want to get my money's worth. I want a new bed.
I wanna
But
sleep good.
yes, yeah, but, you have to have money to spend on things that you enjoy, and everyone enjoys different things, but you have more power to do those things of enjoyment longer if you are saving and investing, all of those things. So kind of on that note, what are some common money mistakes you think new hygienists might make?
I mean, it might not be a mistake, but I feel like for some, it's making those really big purchases as soon as you graduate, and then you kinda get locked into having to work those 5 days a week. I mean, that's the other thing that I've been able to do is work less clinically and still be okay, without having to stress too much about having to go to work. I think that once you're locked into that, you could get burnt out really quickly. If you don't have any other option but to be there, and I understand that. Like that would be one is kind of just diving right in rather than maybe saving up until you get to that point and just purchasing it like that. And also not investing in themselves as far as buying equipment for themselves that is going to increase the longevity of their career. I think we tend to rely a lot on dentists to purchase things for us. And while I mean, that's great, love that. It's amazing if you can work with a dentist that does purchase those things, but at some point you have to take responsibility for what is happening to your body in the operatory. So some of those bigger purchases like ergonomic loops or a saddle stool, like if you can do that early on in your career and invest in yourself that way, I think again it increases your longevity and ultimately you're able to make more money if you can work longer.
Yeah, absolutely. Thinking through your earning potential and the freedom and flexibility it can give you in the future if you start planning that out right. I know for me, our main goal whenever my husband and I graduated was pay down all the debt so that we can live the life we want to live, right? And it was really hard those years that we had to do that, but we were so used to setting money aside every month, it made it easier to move that into savings. And then if you need to buy a car, okay, you've already kind of honed that skill of saving and preparing for it, but it's really hard in today's society when everything is instant gratification, right?
Yeah. And comparison too, I'm not gonna lie, I want a new car.
Yeah.
You kidding me? Like I would love that. I want to be whipping it around. I want to show it in my day in the life, but like, no.
I know. I'm always like, if I could just win like $100,000 in the lottery, like I would be set. I know exactly what I would do with it. Like I'd invest some, I'd save some. I'm like, but I'd probably get a car.
The other thing I was going to mention too is not investing in really valuable continuing education. Like, I don't think that there's been a time where I have paid for a course or something like that and regretted it. So I think that that's another place where, don't just take the free CE, find a course that you're really interested in. And I think if you're really able to do that early on and invest in yourself that way, like more opportunities will come your way.
That's kind of how I felt going to RDH under one roof this year. That was my first time to ever go. I'm 10 years in as a hygienist. I'm like, oh my gosh, think about just how different my career might even look at this point if I had been going year after year because it's just such an incredible event. You're surrounded by all these amazing hygienists. So that was an investment I felt like in myself to go through. I went through evolution and the whole conference and it was expensive, but like you said, I do not regret it. I think it was probably the best thing I've done in my career. So I love that. Really, really great advice. Well, do you have any resources or any recommendations you have for students? Maybe something that you enjoy that helps you kind of on this financial journey?
My first recommendation would have to be the Negotiate Anything podcast. And also, there's a book. The author's name is Kwame. And a lot of that is just learning about negotiation and having difficult conversations, whether that be, with a patient or maybe you want to ask for that raise and you don't know how to navigate that conversation. These are skills that we learn over time, just like learning how to use an instrument. And that was kind of where I started to just learn more about communication skills. But it also goes into like, you could take that into finances and if you're asking for things like that raise. Another book that I really like is We Should All Be Millionaires. And Amber Lovatos actually recommended that book to me. And I think that as women, the book does a really good job of giving us that confidence to ask for the things that we're worth. So I would say those would be my top first choices.
Yeah, I've actually never read that book. So I'm really excited I'm like, okay, I'm going to get on my free library app. See if they are.
You'll be fired up and it'll make you just like want to just ask for everything you're worth.
Yeah, I mean, it is a skill, like you said, it's almost like a muscle that you have to practice that negotiation skill and asking for things. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. And also for me, now I'm not afraid of anyone telling me no because I'm like, okay, I'll just go ask someone else or I'll try something different. The more you practice it and the more rejections you get sometimes, it really does help to work that muscle and get a little bit better at it.
Like I'm not afraid of a no. Like
Yeah.
I am more afraid of not asking for something or asking for too little when I was really worth more. And another thing that I learned too is like you have to think of like how your best friend would advocate for you and what they would ask for. Like they see your worth and they know how to speak up. So like you have to going into a conversation, think about like what they would say about you and how they would fight for you and advocate for you. And that's how you kind of have to use it in your own voice.
Yes, that's such good advice. I know because the way we talk to ourselves is not the same as what our friends or family would say about us. Absolutely. I love that. Well, any final advice that you would have for a new grad or student moving into this season of their life, thinking through future financials?
So much. I mean, I feel like the longer you are in it, the more you learn about it, but just start early and invest in yourself and do the research, look into things, ask the questions, don't be afraid to ask the questions. Try not to compare yourself to others too much, I feel like that really takes away a lot of our happiness. And ultimately, you are worth what you know you're worth, and you don't need to compare to what somebody else is getting. So I think just also knowing as a new grad, you are valuable. You have just learned the most recent things in dental hygiene school, and you can bring that into a practice, and you're adaptable. So also, don't downplay yourself and think that you're not worth something, because as a new grad, you most certainly are.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for this amazing conversation. I'm glad that this is a topic that you're passionate about, because I know that the best place to start thinking about finances is as a student and early on, right? Before you get out and move into that career, so that you can make good choices. But with that, it is a learning curve. We have to continue learning and building, and financials are no different. You have to spend some time getting acquainted with it. Where can students find you? I know where to find you, but where can students find you if they have any questions?
Yeah, absolutely. You can find me on all social media platforms as Brush with Brit. And then you can also email me at brushwithbrit@gmail.com.
Yes, and listen to the Brush with Brit podcast as well.
Oh,
Lots
thank
of
you.
great topics on there. Yeah, I love it. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.